What if the person you trust most has been hiding a secret for 25 years? A secret so deep, so dangerous, it could tear apart everything you've worked for, everything you believed in? Mark and Aisha Blackwell seemed to have it all: a loving family, a home any couple would dream of, and a successful business that was on the rise. To the outside world, they were the picture of perfection. But beneath the surface of their seemingly flawless life, a storm was quietly building, one that Mark could never have seen coming. What happens when the truth comes crashing down? What happens when the one person you thought you could rely on betrays you in a way that shatters your very sense of reality? Mark's world was about to be completely shattered, and nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same. In the quiet suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, Mark Blackwell lived what most would consider a dream life. He had built his world from the ground up. As a successful businessman, he was the proud owner of a growing logistics company, one that provided for his family and offered a future brimming with potential. His two teenagers, Hannah and Luke, were the apple of his eye, and his wife, Aisha, had always stood beside him through every challenge, every triumph. She was the epitome of grace and poise, the perfect mother, the perfect wife, the unwavering pillar of their family. To those on the outside, the Blackwells were untouchable, a model family. But as Mark would soon learn, the cracks were already there, hidden beneath the surface, waiting to rupture. But behind Aisha's graceful smile, Mark was about to uncover something that would turn their entire world upside down. A betrayal, so carefully concealed, that had been festering for years. Years of secrets, lies, and stolen moments. And as the truth began to unravel, Mark could no longer ignore the unsettling feeling in his gut that something had been off. But how could he have known? How could anyone have suspected? Aisha, always the picture of composure, had carefully crafted an illusion, a life that appeared perfect, but was in fact haunted by a loneliness she had never revealed to anyone. Behind her poised exterior was a woman whose unmet emotional needs were silently consuming her, whispering lies into the quiet corners of her heart. Mark had always thought their marriage was unbreakable. But what happens when trust is shattered? When you realize the person who promised to stand by you, come hell or high water, has been living a lie? How do you confront the woman you've shared everything with? When you realize the truth of her actions could destroy everything you've ever known? What was Aisha hiding? And how far had she gone to protect her secret? One fateful day, Mark Blackwell's life was about to be derailed by a discovery so simple, yet so profound, it would forever change the course of his marriage. It started with something as seemingly harmless as a text message. Aisha's phone buzzed as Mark was sitting beside her, the two of them quietly enjoying a rare evening together. Curiosity pulled him toward it. He glanced down at the screen. The message was short, yet its words struck him like a thunderbolt. "I can't wait to be with you again, my love. We'll make this work. I promise." Mark froze. His heart raced. The words seemed to echo in his ears. Who is this? He thought. It must be a mistake. Perhaps it was an old friend, an ex-colleague, someone from college, someone who had sent a message to the wrong person. But as he sat there, staring at the screen, a flicker of doubt ignited within him. He tried to push it aside, telling himself that it was just a misunderstanding. There had to be a reasonable explanation, right? After all, Aisha was his wife, his partner in everything, the mother of their children. Surely, she wouldn't betray him. But deep down, Mark couldn't shake the unease that had settled in his stomach. He shrugged it off and tried to forget, but the feeling gnawed at him. Days passed, and life went on, but something in the air had shifted. Aisha's behavior had become different. She was more distant, often retreating into herself. She would leave the house at strange hours, always with a hurried excuse. "Just a late meeting at work," she'd say, but Mark couldn't help but notice the way her voice trembled. Then there was her phone, always locked, always out of sight, never leaving her side. It was as if she was hiding something from him. Mark's suspicions began to grow. He watched, waited. Small things caught his attention. The way Aisha was always on her phone, her whispers during late-night calls when he was meant to be sleeping. And yet, when he asked, she'd always dodge his questions, her responses short, her gaze shifting. One evening, after she left the house under the pretense of a work event, Mark found himself pacing in the kitchen, The memory of that first text message echoing in his mind. Was it his imagination? Or was there truly something more to this? Then, another message appeared, and then another. The weight of those words, "I promise," was heavy, unshakable. Mark knew now. He knew it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a friend. His wife, the woman he had spent 25 years with, had a secret. A secret that was steadily unraveling his world. Was this the beginning of the end for their marriage? Or was Mark simply letting his mind run wild? He didn't know how to confront her, how to even begin to ask the questions that burned in his chest. What would you have done in Mark's position? Would you have confronted Aisha right away, or try to gather more proof? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. After weeks of mounting suspicion, Mark knew he couldn't live in the dark any longer. The quiet unease, the whispers in the back of his mind, he couldn't ignore it. One night, while Aisha slept peacefully beside him, Mark made the decision that would change everything. He would uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. His heart pounded in his chest as he reached for her phone, his hands trembling with anticipation and fear. Mark had never considered spying on his wife. He trusted her, or at least he had. But tonight, the questions had become too much. The doubt was suffocating him. With a few swift movements, he unlocked the phone. What he found was nothing short of a nightmare. There, hidden behind innocent apps and everyday texts, were intimate photos, romantic messages, and detailed plans for secret meetings. Mark's eyes widened as he read the words. Words that cut deeper than anything he had imagined. Aisha's secret lover wasn't just anyone. His name was Derek Matthews, a charismatic businessman who had somehow wormed his way into her life. Mark had never heard of Derek before, but the more he read, the clearer it became. Derek wasn't just some fleeting fling. He was everything Mark wasn't: smooth, charming, and opportunistic. Derek Matthews was in his early 40s, a rising star in the real estate world, with connections in high places and a reputation for getting what he wanted. Mark's stomach churned as he read how Derek had slowly infiltrated their world, taking advantage of Aisha's emotional distance, filling the void Mark had left behind. Derek wasn't just interested in Aisha for her beauty. He had studied her, sensed her dissatisfaction with her marriage, and had seen an opportunity to exploit her loneliness. He was a man who knew exactly how to play his cards, using his charm and manipulation to pull Aisha deeper into his world. Flashbacks began to play in Mark's mind as he pieced it all together. Aisha's growing emotional distance, her late-night absences, her refusal to talk about her day. Mark had dismissed these things as just the pressures of life. But they weren't. They were the signs of a woman searching for something that she felt she was missing. And Derek had been the one to give it to her. Now, everything had changed. Mark was no longer just dealing with betrayal. He was grappling with the collapse of everything he thought he knew about his marriage, his wife, and the life they had shared. The question now was, what would Mark do with this truth? Could he forgive Aisha for the betrayal? Or had the damage been done beyond repair? If you were in Mark's position, how would you respond? Could you ever trust again after something like this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The tension that had been building for weeks finally reached its breaking point. Mark could no longer stay silent. The hurt, the anger, the crushing disappointment had reached a fever pitch. The man who had once been certain of everything in his life now found himself staring at a woman he no longer recognized. One evening, after what felt like an eternity of sleepless nights and unanswered questions, Mark finally confronted Aisha. It was a moment he had dreaded, yet knew was inevitable. He had gathered all the evidence, every text, every message, every plan. And now it was time to face the truth. I can't believe you did this to us. After everything we've been through, this is how you repay me. Mark's voice cracked, his words trembling with a combination of anger and heartbreak. How could you betray me like this? How could you do this to our family? Aisha, initially caught off guard, tried to deflect, her defenses rising immediately. Mark, please, you don't understand, she began, her voice shaky as she struggled to find the right words. She took a step back, clearly rattled, but still trying to hold on to the facade that had kept her guilt hidden for so long. But Mark wasn't backing down. He had given everything for their family, for their life together. This wasn't something he could ignore. Not anymore. He stepped closer, his voice more intense, raw with emotion. No, Aisha, I don't understand. You let a stranger, someone I didn't even know, into our lives, into our home. And you destroyed everything. How could you do that to me? Aisha's walls began to crumble. For the first time, her composure slipped. Her tears came as the weight of her actions bore down on her. She crumpled to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. I never wanted to hurt you, Mark. I never meant for any of this to happen, she whispered, her voice barely audible through the tears. Then why did you do it? Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you say anything? Mark's frustration boiled over, but even in his anger, there was a rawness to his words, an ache that could only come from someone who had loved deeply and had been betrayed just as deeply. Through her tears, Aisha's voice broke as she finally confessed. It started slowly. I felt invisible in our marriage. You were always working, always busy, and I felt alone. I wasn't seen by you anymore, Mark. I wasn't enough. And then Derek came into my life. He listened to me. He made me feel important. And I got lost in it. I thought it would make everything better. Her confession hung in the air, thick with regret and sorrow. She looked up at him, her face tear-streaked, her eyes filled with guilt. I thought I could fix something inside me that was broken. But instead, I've ruined everything. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mark stood there, torn between the woman he had loved for so long and the reality of her betrayal. His mind raced. He wanted answers, he wanted to understand, but he also knew that there were no words that could undo the damage. So what now? Mark's voice was barely a whisper. What happens to us? Aisha looked up at him, her eyes desperate. I don't know, Mark. I don't know if there's a way back from this. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. The weight of the moment pressed down on them both. Mark didn't know where to go from here. Could he forgive her? Could their marriage survive this? Or was this the end of everything they had built? What would you have done in Mark's position? Could you ever forgive someone who betrayed your trust in such a deep way? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Mark stood at a crossroads. His heart was shattered, his trust obliterated. The woman he had shared a life with, built a future with, had betrayed him in the most profound way possible. The weight of her confession lingered in his mind, each word she had spoken like a knife twisting deeper into his soul. He felt angry, betrayed, but more than anything, he felt lost. Could he ever trust Aisha again? Could their marriage survive this devastating blow? Every moment with her felt like a painful reminder of a life they once had. And now, it was all in question. Mark had never imagined being in this position, questioning the very foundation of his love and his family. The man who once believed in love without hesitation now found himself drowning in a sea of doubt and hurt. Could he rebuild? Or had everything truly crumbled beyond repair? And then, as if the betrayal from Aisha wasn't enough, Mark's investigation into Derek, her lover, took an even darker turn. What started as a desperate attempt to understand the scope of Aisha's affair soon morphed into something far more sinister. Mark's findings revealed that Derek was no mere lover. He had been plotting something far more dangerous, something that could destroy Mark in a way Aisha never could have imagined. Derek, it turned out, wasn't just interested in Aisha's affection. He had been using her, playing a long game to infiltrate Mark's life and, ultimately, his business. It wasn't love that had brought Derek into their world. It was power. Derek had been manipulating Mark's company from the shadows, slowly but surely aligning himself with rivals, waiting for the right moment to strike. He had used Aisha as a pawn in his game, drawing her in with the promise of emotional fulfillment while secretly plotting his next move. As Mark dug deeper, it became clear that Derek's true intentions had nothing to do with love. They had everything to do with revenge, control, and taking what Mark had worked so hard to build. The chilling reality hit Mark like a ton of bricks. Derek wasn't just an opportunistic lover. He was a calculating manipulator, orchestrating a plan to ruin Mark both personally and professionally. His affair with Aisha had been part of a much bigger scheme, a scheme Mark had been too blinded by his own pain to see at first. Derek wasn't just after her affection. Mark realized, his blood running cold. He wanted her as a stepping stone. He wanted to destroy everything I've worked for. The truth of Derek's betrayal hit Mark with full force. As he confronted Derek, the tension between the two men was palpable. You thought you could ruin my life and take everything I've worked for? Mark's voice trembled with fury. Well, you were wrong. You have no idea who you're messing with. Derek, ever the smooth talker, tried to play it cool, his smirk never fading. You've been blind, Mark. blind to the reality that everything you've built is fragile. All it took was a little pressure in the right place, and now I'm in control. Mark's mind raced, but this time wasn't just about saving his marriage. It was about saving his legacy. Derek's plot had been years in the making, carefully designed to tear apart Mark's empire piece by piece. But the deeper Mark dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about money. It was about power, revenge, and the destruction of everything Mark held dear. What did Derek truly want? Was this a personal vendetta, or did he have his sights set on something more dangerous? And how far would Mark go to protect what was rightfully his? The emotional fallout from Aisha's betrayal was only compounded by the revelation of Derek's true motives. Mark's life was unraveling, and now he had to face the devastating reality that the man he had trusted and the woman he had loved had conspired together to tear him apart. As Mark faced Derek, the tension between them reached its peak. This wasn't just a battle for Aisha's heart anymore. It was a battle for Mark's entire world. And Derek was willing to do anything to win. What would you do if you were Mark? How far would you go to protect your family and your business? Share your thoughts in the comments below. After everything, the lies, the betrayal, the shattered trust, Mark was left standing at a crossroads once again. He had spent countless hours reflecting, torn between his love for Aisha and the undeniable pain that now defined their relationship. The emotional scars were deep, and no amount of words could erase what had happened. The trust they once shared had been ripped apart, and the foundation of their marriage had crumbled under the weight of secrets and deceit. As Mark weighed his options, the reality became clear. The damage was irreversible. The emotional betrayal, the manipulation by Derek, the years of neglect, these things couldn't be undone. There was no going back. Mark made the painful decision to separate from Aisha. "I can't do this anymore," Mark whispered to himself, a mix of sadness and finality in his voice. The words were as hard to say as they were to hear, but Mark knew deep down that it was the only way forward. "I need to focus on rebuilding my life. Rebuilding my business," he said, his voice firm, yet strained. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but it was a path he had to walk alone. The betrayal had cut too deep for reconciliation. As Mark moved forward, Aisha was left to face the consequences of her actions. What started as a desperate search for emotional connection had turned into the destruction of everything she had once held dear. Not only had she destroyed her marriage, but she had also lost the trust of her children, the very one she had tried to protect. She tried, in vain, to reconnect with them, but the damage was done. The hurt in their eyes, the distance between them, was a reminder of the fracture she had caused. Her path to redemption would be long and difficult. Would her children ever forgive her? Would she ever forgive herself? "I never wanted any of this," Aisha cried one evening, sitting in front of her children, her voice breaking. "I was lost, and I made a terrible mistake. But I love you, and I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." Her children, still young, were caught in the crossfire of their parents' broken marriage. They didn't know how to process the heartbreak, and neither did Aisha. But the truth remained. There were no easy answers, no quick fixes. The consequences of betrayal echoed far beyond Mark and Aisha's fractured marriage. It had spilled into their children's lives, their relationships, and every corner of their once shared world. Mark's journey, however, was just beginning. He had made the difficult decision to move on, but the question still lingered. Can anyone ever truly trust again after such a deep betrayal? Can love be rebuilt after it has been so completely shattered? What do you think? Was there any way for Mark and Aisha's marriage to survive this? Could forgiveness ever be enough to heal the wounds left behind? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.